Why do we love reading stories about superheroes? Because it entertains us, allows us to feel good, but it also allows us to use these characters as a mirror in which we can see our own reflection and potentially see the light at the end of a long tunnel when it comes to our own hardships. If Daredevil can make it through the day, if Jessica Cruz can find the courage to keep fighting, then maybe we can too. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. When it comes to mental health, it's an ongoing discussion that is only seemingly becoming more prominent and featured in the everyday as we start to accept more and more that what we thought was status quo when it came to our mental state really wasn't, and that a lot of us aren't okay. The term normal is being redefined as we look around and realize no one is really free of struggle or trauma or fear in the world, or is normal. We all have baggage, we all have work to do, and we are all on our own journey towards self-betterment, healing, and growth, moving at our own pace. No one is perfect. Not even superheroes. Today we're going to take a look at some of the superheroes who are also working towards improving their own mental health by counting down the top 10 superheroes who went to therapy. Honestly, if everyone in the comics went to therapy more often and was better at communicating, Prime Earth and Earth 616 might be way safer places. Probably have a lot less problems. Number 10, Booster Gold. Booster Gold is one of the heroes who appeared at Sanctuary and Heroes in Crisis to seek help. When it comes to what Booster needs therapy for, the list seems like it could be a long one. One, just the stressors of being a superhero and everything that comes along with the title is really enough of a reason. But two, Booster Gold is a man out of time who basically gave up everything to become a hero in our day and age. Also, add in that he's not often acknowledged as being one of the best superheroes out there, and is also considered annoying by many readers as well as some in the superhero community, and it's easy to see what he might have to talk about. Though I think the hardest thing for Booster, at least from what we see of his first session, is pinning down just exactly why he feels he is hurting. When it comes to therapy, in my experience at least, one of the most important things is just that, understanding why you feel the way you do, what caused it, and where is it coming from. Only in understanding the past can we truly move towards the future without as much fear, at least, of repeating it again. Number 9, Wonder Woman. In Heroes in Crisis issue number 2, we see that Wonder Woman is another hero taking advantage of Sanctuary, but she also was forced to stay in a mental institution after experiencing a psychotic break that left her in a catatonic state. And not a good mental institution either, although in comics, mental institutions tend to be pretty bad. They didn't believe that she was Wonder Woman, and it seems that I guess Steve Trevor forgot to mention that when checking her in, so they basically thought that she was delusional and was imagining that she was Wonder Woman, when no, she really is Wonder Woman. Yikes. In Heroes in Crisis, it seems the trauma she experienced as a child when it came to her upbringing amidst the warriors of Themyscira themselves is what most haunted her. And of course, typical Diana, she finds it hard to even ask for help to deal with her trauma, believing there are others who need help more than she does. Saying something like that, Diana, also implies that you think others are more worthy of help than you are, which makes me really sad for Wonder Woman. I feel like that's a thing that people say in therapy, and I understand it's supposed to be like a moment where we're like, oh, Wonder Woman, but I was like, oh, Wonder Woman. Just because you're strong and awesome, you need help too sometimes. That's okay. Number 8, Deadpool. Deadpool has gone to therapy on multiple occasions and has also had flashbacks of adults telling him he needs therapy from a young age. Although it's hard to tell with Deadpool if these flashbacks are true or not. Is it really his past? I mean, his head has been messed around with so much, it's kind of hard to tell what's real when it comes to his backstory and what's not, even from his own flashback perspective. Deadpool has been sentenced to spend time in a mental institution in the past after being deemed criminally insane, and has even sought out Fool Killer to get some help when it comes to his mental state and his existential viewpoint as a superhero. Mostly for Deadpool, I feel like a lot of the help that he needs has to do with like existential crises and probably a lot of guilt over things that he's done and who he is as a person. Number 7, Daredevil. Matt Murdock in the comics suffers from intense depression, something that it's explained his mother actually also struggled with. Daredevil definitely has a lot of reasons to feel depressed too, to feel a sense of emptiness, meaninglessness, or even the will to just give up. Bullseye in the comics has killed many of his loved ones, and Kingpin never stops sending allies to try and destroy Matt's life when he's not busy, of course, trying to do so himself. But even through all that adversity, Daredevil finds a way to keep fighting, and in fact, his mental illness in a way even kind of makes him stronger. It's what helps him resist Kilgrave, the Purple Man's influence, even after getting beat up pretty badly by the villain. Daredevil's struggle with his mental health is actually so iconic that when he seemed genuinely happy for a time in the comics, his friend Foggy expressed concern as opposed to elation, wondering how exactly Matt had managed to turn his frown, so to speak, upside down. Murdoch confided the truth that he actually hadn't. He still struggles every day, but he works hard to choose not to give in to that pull of depression. It's not easy and every day is still a struggle, but he's trying. That's the truth. It should be noted that while Matt has worked towards healing his wounds through self-awareness and journeys of self-discovery, focused on healing, as far as I know, he's never sought formal therapy, though honestly, he would likely benefit from it, so I'm including him on this list to kind of be like, hey, Matt, maybe you should go to therapy. Just a suggestion. Number 6, Jessica Cruz. In issue 44 of Green Lanterns, we learned that Green Lantern Jessica Cruz has been in therapy for a year and is still working on her PTSD and her anxiety. Her therapist asks her to try and go back to what happened to her friends while she was camping, the traumatic event of their death, in order to try and help her move forward. They seem to have talked about everything else except that, as Jessica isn't willing to go back there yet. In fact, she even takes the question to dive into that experience very personally. She believes her therapist is implying that Jessica herself is withholding on purpose and even potentially holding back information that would allow those responsible to be found and turned into the authorities. Of course, her therapist is just trying to encourage Jessica to open up for her own sake and is not implying any of that, but Jessica likely takes it personally and reacts defensively because she blames herself, something that many who suffer from various kinds of trauma deal with. It's what also makes it so hard to reach out for help most of the time. Number 5, Punisher. The Punisher is a character who is fraught with mental health issues, most of which stem from his post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, likely from his time overseas spent at war either in Vietnam or Afghanistan, depending on the version that you're looking at, but also from the experience of losing his family. While Frank Castle from the comics doesn't often think to seek out therapy as a way of healing and prefers to kind of fight his own demons face to face, the Punisher from the Netflix series, who also enjoys a one-on-one fight with his own demons, truth be told, does end up going to therapy at one point. We see him attend a group therapy session for those who suffer from PTSD, where he confesses to being afraid. First time, as long as I can remember, I don't have a war to fight, he says. And I guess if I'm going to be honest, I'm scared. Number 4, Arsenal. Roy Harper was one of the heroes to go to Sanctuary for therapy. While there, he talked about his struggle with addiction. For Roy, it all started as a way to deal with pain, as is so often the case with that specific struggle. As a hero, in his case, who didn't really have superpowers, he found himself getting hurt a lot, and so he turned to medication to help him with that. From there, it just kind of spiraled out of control to the point that he was taking an overwhelming amount of different medications and then went from pills to injections when it came to realizing that the pills were actually causing harm to his organs. At the time, he looked at it like he was simply trying to save his organs and himself. To him, it was what heroes did. That was how he justified it. Number 3, Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones, both in the comics and in her Netflix show, is a character that allows us to explore what it's like living with PTSD and trying to cope with it. In the Netflix show, we learned that Jessica actually did go to therapy, but wasn't really a fan of it. Her therapist told her to repeat street names from the neighborhood she grew up in when she was a child whenever she was experiencing symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Of course, we also know Jessica, as stubborn as she is not a fan of therapy and kind of thinks it's ridiculous. And I mean, I also get with like an exercise like that why she might think that, but I'm sure her therapist was trying to do it to like kind of help her like ground herself. Still, the fact that she even went to therapy at all is progress. And although Jessica tends to also push her support system away and attempts to deal with things on her own, often turning to alcohol sometimes for comfort, there is still some hope in the series that she'll get the help she needs. There is the support group that she helped to bring together of other victims of Kilgraves. In the end, PTSD is an illness that plagues many and can cause debilitating anxiety in patients. What's more, while characters who are war veterans like Frank Castle suffer from it, Jessica is a good example of what everyday PTSD can look like. While war veterans and victims of natural disasters also often experience this mental illness, research has shown that women are actually twice as likely to develop PTSD. Jessica not only deals with the trauma from her experiences with Kilgrave, but she also deals with childhood trauma, losing her family in a car accident, finding that she had superpowers, and in the comics, being bullied and even blaming herself for her family's death. That's a lot of trauma. Number 2, Batman. As much as we look at Batman as an often mentally unstable hero who definitely could use a regular therapist as opposed to dealing with his problems by, solving mysteries and punching things, we should acknowledge that a younger Bruce did actually end up seeing a therapist to help deal with the passing of his parents. At least that's what's implied in the comics. So maybe his fight for justice is coming from a place all his own, as opposed to the unresolved trauma of his parents' death. Because if he did seek out therapy, there is a good chance that that trauma was at least partially resolved. You'd hope. During the denouement of Joker War, Batman offers Bao Pham a card with his counselor's information. You see, Bao Pham also lost his parents and was inspired by fellow vigilantes to become the Avenger and killer Clown Hunter. Batman suggests that he talk to someone about those issues before just jumping into a life of vigilantism, and also warns Bao not to kill again on his turf. You can check out Batman's conversation with Clown Hunter in issue 100 of the 2016 Batman series, the current series for those watching this in the present, but maybe not the current series for those watching in the future. Hello, future friends. Number 1, Moon Knight. Now, to be clear, the closest I believe we've ever seen Mark Spector to being in therapy was when he appeared to have been hallucinating and found himself in a mental institution, with his therapist explaining that he had always been there since he was a child, and that his life as Moon Knight was merely the delusion. But this was reality. In reality, the mental institution, which wasn't a very good one, mind you, was an illusion. And the whole point of it, from a storytelling perspective, was to kind of help resolve the imbalance in Mark Spector in his life. In doing so, he regained control over his personalities and banded them together to become some semblance of whole. At least that's what Mark was left believing. Personally, I think the exploration of his sanity as someone who had spent most of his life, or a part of it at least, hospitalized or institutionalized without remembering could have been really interesting if we had gone down the path of that's reality. As while I love reading about Moon Knight and his struggles, we've never really seen him get help for his dissociative personality disorder, or get help for any of the trauma in his past, and he's got a lot. I would love to see the idea of this being explored once he makes his way into the MCU, as just coping with it and then allowing yourself to be guided on a journey by a moon god probably isn't the healthiest choice when it comes to addressing your mental illness. Although I will say him dealing and meeting with his multiple personalities, and then also Khonshu, which he finds out is also kind of part of him, is definitely helpful, because I think accepting yourself is kind of what so much of therapy is about. But it's kind of the first step, so still a lot of work to do for Mark Spector. Still a lot of work to do for all of us, I'm sure. What are some heroes that you look up to in the world of comics, and why? What are some characters that you find you identify with? Which heroes would you recommend some therapy to? Who do you think needs to go to therapy? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host, Amanda McKnight, reminding you to take care of yourself and to stay nerdy, my friends.